I think that's better. I don't know, my YouTube stream crashed for a bit. Whatever, man. Who gives a shit?
Friday evening. Kokoda Ranges, Nelson Lakes National Park and Arthur's Pass National. Possibly heavy, especially about and east of the main divide, gradually clearing from Friday morning. Aoudaki Mount Cook, Mount Aspiring and Fiordland National Parks. Scattered snow showers easing and becoming isolated south of Mount Cook Thursday afternoon, then clearing Friday morning. Winds are gale southerlies, severe gale in exposed places, gradually easing throughout Friday. The freezing level is 1,200 metres, sloping to 700 metres in the south, then rising to 2,500 metres, but 1,300 metres in the south Friday evening. The time is approaching 8 minutes past 3, and you're on Afternoons with Emil Donovan, where he's just had the most delectable interview that I'm finding it hard to concentrate on the task at hand.
If you were to ask me how I feel.
Maybe you're not the only one.
I could answer you, but I'm
Everyone's sending in their vocals orders. In fact, it seems as though that interviewer sent several people down to the supermarket to buy a loaf of Vogels. Oh, boy. Vogels toasted with jam and sliced banana on top, says Chrissy in Whangaparawa. Golden syrup and beef dripping, I mentioned that to you before. Not so sure about that, but as I say, don't knock it until you try it. Can anybody out there speak in favour of golden syrup and beef dripping on their toast? Barker's jam, Swiss cheese and Vogels, says someone else. Lots of love coming through for Vogels with avocado spread. Liz in Kakanui says sliced kiwi fruit and butter. Vogels fruit bread with sliced kiwi fruit and butter. Deary me, look at that. The only limits.
I think Shane might have got.
Here we go.
Yeah, he's got it. Yep. Thank you. Thank you all for coming today. Oh, I think Shane's coming. Oh, is he going to do it separately? No. Yeah, that's why I'm just standing to the side. The matua will stand here. I'll be at the right hand of the Father.
Hilarious.
Warm. Well, some of the questions were hot too.
I'm gonna laugh so hard my cum's gonna fall out of me.
Answers. Diverse range of answers. That's good too. Oh, yeah, go matua.
Oh god, Shane's gonna be here. Fucking kill me, dude.
Yes, I've just said I'm at the right end of the Father. The matua. Yeah, come on.
Could you just walk us through these conservation land changes that you've announced today?
Well, the Conservation Amendment Bill, we recognise that New Zealanders love conservation. So do we.
How brave.
So do I. And there's been a lot of interest generated recently in relation to the disposal and exchange provisions within the bill. There's no intention, we've had no intention to sell off large parcels of land, but it seems that the words don't necessarily match our intentions. So what we've announced today is that we'll take out the exchange and disposal provisions and look to really improve on what we currently have, the status quo. Okay, so that's the first thing. And then we'll work with others, some of whom are here today, to work on other provisions in the bill, including those provisions around, let's say, the purpose clauses that are causing a bit of excitement and energy. We'll be right into the Select Committee, or I will, after talking with my Cabinet colleagues and making sure we're all on the same waka to enable the Select Committee to understand our views and then work on these.
He said a Maori word, guys. That means he's with the people.
Well, I think part of the challenge here, Jason, is that there have been some maps that have been circulated that don't represent our intentions, and we don't believe they represent.
Shame needs a limo.
However, that's caused a bit of uncertainty, that's caused concern, and to be fair, a lot of ambiguity. So we've heard New Zealanders, we've listened to New Zealanders, and as a result, we've taken action.
So does this mean you won't be able to sell anything now
Well, no, land is disposed of in the conservation estate on a regular basis. It was disposed of under the Honourable Eugenie Sage. It was disposed of under the 5 Labor ministers and the previous government ministers of conservation. And they are generally small parcels of land with limited or no conservation value. But again, we need to look at that, we need to work through it and make sure that we've got the right landing.
So even low quality conservation land?
Low quality conservation land has been part of a disposal process under many previous governments. What we have to be absolutely clear about the safeguards that go around any disposal process that is used from time to time. But I've used examples over the last week to demonstrate what we are talking about.
And you've talked about mischief and mischaracterization in this debate. I mean, where do you think that came from and what's changed between when you made those comments and today?
Well, the suggestion that we are selling up to 60% of the estate is absolutely adjacent to the intention, adjacent to what we've said, but people are confused, and so we're clearing up that confusion.
So does removing the disposal and exchange clause mean that nothing other than stewardship land can be sold now?
No, again, we have to revert back to the status quo and improve the status quo provisions. Don't forget, land can be sold on a regular basis for treaty settlements, and now and again with other arrangements like the Kōrepu Pā up north, the Pā of Hongihiga, but you have to use legislation in order to effect that change. But it does come out already. It has come out under previous governments, and we need to improve not just that provision, a whole range of things in the Conservation Act to make it a better system for Kiwis and all New Zealanders.
Yeah.
What sort of improvements are you talking about?
Well, across the whole Act.
For the status quo test?
Oh, for the status quo test, to give some better safeguards. In what we proposed, it actually had a high degree of safeguards, engaging with iwi and Māori groups, referring back to the right of first refusal owner, the person who holds that right, to go through public engagement and consultation. There was a range of steps, and if you take the time to have a look at what was proposed, you'll realise that actually the safeguards in there, very clear, very strong, for a process that is sparingly used.
Look, the reality is we broadened the scope in the proposed law to make disposal more efficient and more expeditious. We have not managed to carry the public with the current provisions that are in the law. Tama is bringing back some improvements to allay the fears in the public, but also to allow DOC in the future to more efficiently transact their business. But
he could genuinely be like talking about what he genuinely thinks was, or what he like rehearsed or whatever, but genuinely sounds like he's speaking through a teleprompter, no matter how he like speaks. Sorry, no matter what he does, it always sounds like he's like speaking through a teleprompter.
We engaged across different coalition partners and people with a genuine interest and love for the land to figure out how can we ensure that we still retain an intention to safeguard processes, but also where suitable, make sure we reduce all the clunkiness. There's a lot of clunkiness in the conservation system, and it's not just in this area, it's in a whole range of areas, and that's why you see such an effort that we've put into over the last 3 years to bring something up for the select committee process, for first reading select committee process, and democracy. That's how it works.
Shane Jones, are you happy about this?
yeah, look, we're a three-way coalition, but naturally my leader and I, we support Tama. The reality is the scope was far too much for key members in the environmental community and the broader community to swallow. I think people do accept to be efficient. We want redundant pieces of land to be disposed of, but we don't want to open up some gaping wound that causes people to feel that there's a mass privatisation exercise about to be embarked upon.
There's still concern among conservation groups about Clause 6EA, which you've mentioned, the economic imperative.
Well, Tama we're waiting for Tama to bring back some refinements to that language, but the reality is there are economic affairs that currently take place on DOC land, quarrying, mining, a lot of tourism, and we want to ensure that economic matters have status in broader conservation debates, and Tama will bring back various options as to how we can get that balance correctly situated.
Minister, So will the Conservation Act have conservation as its core purpose?
It always has been, it continues to be, and we articulated that through the bill. There are some people that have different views, and we're in a democracy. We acknowledge that people can have different views, but we will be outlining our intentions, set out our observations to the Select Committee and let them run that process. Of course, there'll be others that contribute, put their hands up on submissions and try and work out, okay, what's the best wording for a range of provisions throughout the bill. But have no doubt, there's economic activity that takes place on conservation right now. There's over $5 billion worth of GDP that's enabled on land of our tupuna, land that's currently in the public conservation estate. And what we want to do is make sure that we can generate further revenue in a suitable way within the conservation purpose, so we can reinvest in biodiversity, we can reinvest into saving birds, we can reinvest in fixing up some of the huts and tracks around the country.
I think the concern is people think 6EA overrides any conservation. It's economic purpose above conservation. Can you tell New Zealanders where things stand?
That's a strong concern, but our view has always been and continues to be that conservation is the overarching purpose, but it is not binary or exclusive of other things taking place, which is what we have right now. Whether or not you go to Milford Sound or the Hermitage up in Aoraki, or indeed even the Rangitoto huts over on Rangitoto, just as you go off the boat and you go past what looks like an ice cream shop. You know, there is economic activity that takes place. We want to enable that, and we also want to generate more international visitors to come and pay to access some of the land. A provision that leans into economic opportunity actually better enables that.
Look, it's ridiculous to assert that on 33% of the land there should be no economic activity. We can't afford this Luddite thinking. That's why Tama's going to bring back some improved wording.
Can I just ask about some comments that Chris Finlay
This guy only ever talks enthusiastically when there's hate in his heart. He's never like, whenever like some like actual policy to like, you know, do something in government, it's like, you know, we don't think about this. But the moment it takes something to like hate on someone, holy shit, this motherfucker turns on.
But let me tell you right now, Jason, no government in history has made as much investment into mining as this government.
So true.
No government in history
He's
has
cooking.
met the delivery of settlement obligations and to complete on an on-track basis as this government. And no government has had to face the considerable reduction in the 2-year-old immunisation rate for Māori children. It came down from 89% to less than 65% in 2023 when this government took over, and Minister Brown and others are working feverishly to improve that.
Yeah, and in that time, though, the Waitangi Tribunal has granted a record 10 urgent inquiries into your government's policies. Is this an indication that the relationship is strained?
Well, it's an indication when you see Minister Paul Goldsmith carry through significant treaty settlements and over 24, 25 Māori co-owned or co-managed or co-delivered fast-track projects are put on Schedule 2 of the Fast-Track Approvals Act. So I think that when I stand back and look at Crown-Māori relations, there's been some massive challenges, but there's also been some massive growth and progress, and that's what the Matua, I and our Cabinet colleagues are enthusiastic around.
I see the Matua giggle when I asked that question. I was wondering if you could give your views as well.
Oh, look, Chris Finlayson had his go in public life. He's running a podcast seeking to boost his viewership. His remarks are gratuitous and no one cares what he thinks in our cabinet. We do believe that the recalibration in terms of changing the number of references to the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi in law is necessary. And I sort of feel that the Waitangi Tribunal is sort of like a farmer's collie, lame, chasing every passing car. And we'll deal with that after the next election.
Be that as it may, I mean, the government is still spending millions of dollars through Crown law defending itself against the Waitangi Tribunal. Is this a good use of taxpayer money?
I think it's defended itself against claimants to the Waitangi Tribunal, and it's something that we've talked about, the endurance of the Waitangi to the Waitangi Tribunal, and it's something that we've talked about. The endurance of the Waitangi Tribunal is important, and just as important is making sure that we get improvement and cut through on some of these statistics that can continue to malign young people, young Māori, and whānau Māori throughout the country. And that's why we're so enthused by the investments that we're making into education, into housing, into health, and other forms of well-being.
We've got documents that show it was $800,000 worth of taxpayer money defending the treaty principles bill.
Yeah, and there was $300 million invested into a light rail project to build 10 metres of light rail. So I think we need to just square that up.
Yeah, look, Jason, we campaigned on curbing the writ of the Waitangi Tribunal. A review has taken place. Without a doubt, the Waitangi Tribunal, in my view, has gone well beyond its constitutional reservation. However, there are bigger issues in front of us in terms of our legislative timetable. We will be shrinking the number of references to the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi in law, and I've no doubt as the election gets nearer, the future role, if any, of the Waitangi Tribunal will be addressed by us and the voting public.
Kia ora. Thanks for your time.
Minister Jones, why didn't you fly Qantas on your Canada trip last year?
Pardon?
Why didn't you fly Qantas on your
The matua is here to talk about the environment, and we're not playing whack-a-mole, we're not playing trivia pursuits about anything to do with any overseas trips. Tēnā koutou katoa.
Oh my god.
You've got the opportunity to address it now.
Thank you.
That's so big.
Thanks, guys. If you want to
That's so base. That's so base. The man just ran. He's like, no, I don't want to deal with this. Leave me alone. You got to respect it to some degree. How skilled he is in avoiding criticism.
Deeply involved in our relationship with China. Just let me start by welcoming Dr. Sun Dong, Secretary for Innovation from Hong Kong. It's great to have you in New Zealand, and thank you for coming all this way to be with us today. Can I also acknowledge Ambassador Wang and just say thank you for your hard work in support of deepening the China-New Zealand relationship as well. And of course, it's good to see my parliamentary colleagues, our great Minister of Trade, Todd McClay, I think Jerry Brownlee, Shane Jones, and of course Damien O'Connor. Great to see you all here too, so thank you so much. And can I just thank our co-hosts, Fran O'Sullivan and Simon Bridges. Thank you so much for what you guys do with this event each and every year, and for your passion for this relationship as well, and for creating a forum like this where we can have these debates together. Look, ladies and gentlemen, after first describing the world we operate in, I thought in my time that I have, I wanted to comment on three key areas of the China relationship. Firstly, our frame for the China relationship at the political level. Secondly, the new opportunities that I think exist for exporters in China, and ultimately what this means for business and what you can therefore expect from government. I think let's recognise the moment that we are in, because we are certainly in a much more contested, fragmented and volatile world. That's not an abstract concept, it's something that you are encountering every day, as are we, and you're seeing it in a shifting supply chains and also in the changing regulatory environments. You're seeing it as where trade is being used as a tool of leverage and as the global economy fragments. And in that age of geopolitical contest, this isn't a single crisis that will pass. This is an era of ongoing disruption. It will be our operating environment for the foreseeable future. Now, for New Zealand, which is a small nation that depends on that international order, that new context matters. That shift from rules to power, as I've talked about in recent weeks, really is a different context by which we are navigating many of our relationships. But our approach is grounded in our core values. We believe in open and predictable trade. We believe in international rules. And of course, we believe in sovereignty and the freedom from coercion. And we believe also in trade diversification. And in a volatile environment, we believe that our national resilience actually comes from having more optionality in our trading environment as well as our security relationships. Now, in that context, China is not just important to us, but it is key to how New Zealand navigates all of that uncertainty out there in the world. Our China relationship is consequential, it's long-term, and it's really important at a time of global economic strain. And so we approach this relationship with respect and also with realism. Our framework for engagement with China, as it is with many of our partners, is the same way. We will cooperate and maximise cooperation wherever we can and where our interests align. We will disagree where we must, and we will communicate and manage those differences in a predictable and a consistent way. And that approach hasn't changed between our two countries. It's understood as the operating framework for how we manage this relationship and how we deepen this relationship. What has changed is certainly the environment around us, and it is one in which we need to squarely focus on New Zealand's interests. My government has prioritised high-level engagement with China because those relationships really do matter. In 2025, to give you a feel for it, we saw 9 ministerial visits to China, including my own, accompanied by a large business delegation. My meetings with President Xi and also Premier Li confirmed that both sides want to grow this relationship further. We collaborate too on shared global interests, whether it's APEC, which China is steering and hosting this year, or whether it's buttressing the rules-based trade system at the WTO. And of course, as with any partner, we are very clear-eyed about New Zealand's interests. So we speak clearly and consistently to China about issues that matter to New Zealand, and whether they relate to trade practices, regional security, or our commitment to a very peaceful Pacific Islands region. We're upfront about concerns, and we manage risk proactively, and we handle those differences through dialogue and discussion. And that is the balance that we are striking. Now, with respect to trade, China, as you all know, remains our biggest market at $23 billion, and exports were up 13% since my government has come to power. And our mainstays of dairy and meat and wood continue to thrive, and that's all great news. But China is no longer just a commodity story. We're seeing a very important shift. The next phase of the China story, without doubt, is premiumisation, it's branding and innovation. And those preferences, those consumer preferences, are changing through the rising middle classes and through the demographic changes that are taking place within China internally. We won't succeed, as we've talked about before, on scale. And
China's middle class is not thriving. You can do you can literally just search this up. There's a lot of news stories about it and the economic indicators. The reason why the Chinese economic model is based on exports is because they have no demand internally. Like their internal demand for investment or consumerism is down, which is why people want to export to China right now. Obviously, things can change, but as it's heading, China's deflation is not exactly like people think inflation is bad. Deflation is like infinitely worse. It is like the Satan of economics. Once you start down that path, it is so hard to get out of it. It's what killed the Japanese economic miracle, and it's what's going to kill the Chinese economic miracle.
So we compete on high value and high trust, and our advantage is in story-driven products supported by digital channels and R&D. Many of you will be experiencing it. Chinese consumers care about the story behind their food. So Kiwi dairy and meat exporters are leaning into it, those grass-fed credentials, as you've seen, backed by trusted government certification, led largely through MPI. New growth in dairy is driven less by commodities and more by high-value ingredients destined for premium bakery products, and the food service sector in China is accelerating fast. Our fruit exports grew 27% to top 1.6 billion in 2025, driven not by bulk supply, but again by Chinese demand for premium branded products competing on quality and innovation. And that's all underpinned by brands like Zespri and their hard work to defend their intellectual property. The government is backing other Kiwi businesses to diversify into premium exports, and we're making good progress on new export pathways for diverse products, things such as deer velvet, for example. So at the same time, we want to grow high-quality tourism and education. And since we implemented the visa changes, which Tim alluded to before, last year we've seen a 31% leap in Chinese holidaymakers, including an additional 70,000 visitors coming courtesy of us having recognised those Australian visas, which has made it so much easier to travel into New Zealand as well. Our education institutions continue to forge new partnerships in China, which both anchor stronger people-to-people connections and also, obviously, economic growth. For business, I think the message is really simple. China remains one of our biggest opportunities. But the China story is changing, its growth story is evolving, and the biggest opportunities are not where they were. Yes, the tier 1 cities of Beijing and Shanghai and Guangzhou remain absolutely critical, but there's also incredible dynamism happening in the emerging centres as well. Most of those so-called tier 2 and 3 centres have populations at least double the size of New Zealand, and they provide immense opportunities now for Kiwi companies to expand their reach using existing China footprints. China is hyper-competitive. It's a hyper-competitive environment. If you spend time there doing business there, it's incredible. It just requires constant innovation, evolution, adaptation just to get a foot in the door or a click on a homepage. And that just means supplying premium products that account for those changing consumption habits and demographic shifts. And it means thinking about adapting brands and your product design to your consumers' preferences in that market. This relationship runs both ways. China remains an important source of imports for New Zealand, growing 9% year on year. China is excelling, as you'll be well aware, in areas like advanced manufacturing, robotics, and clean technology, and that just creates huge opportunities. And one small example, is the Kiwi car buyers that are benefiting from the double-digit growth in EV imports into New Zealand. And there's a clear signal for New Zealand and China's success. We must keep moving up the value chain, and Kiwi businesses are doing that through digitally provided education and food innovation. And I think there's just a lot more opportunity for us to continue down that pathway, whether it be from agri-tech to gaming. These are not future opportunities. They're here today, and they're here for us to seize today. So I guess what's my advice to New Zealanders doing business with China? First, engagement. Relationships really matter more, not less, in very volatile and uncertain times. The trust, the networks, the on-the-ground presence are becoming even more valuable. Secondly, invest in capability. The businesses that are going to succeed understand the Chinese market deeply, they plan for risk, and they maintain very, very strong and deep partnerships. And then thirdly, partnering with China is not an either-or question. China drives 30% of global growth. It's not China or the rest of the world. There is a way and a need to grow with China and deepen partnerships in other corners of the world. So diversification for New Zealand is all about China and not or. Let me just quickly return to the role of government. My philosophy is pretty simple. Our job is to create the conditions for you to go out as business leaders and thrive. We create the conditions for growth, but you have to go drive that growth through building kick-ass, really high-quality companies. We're expanding trade opportunities. We're actively expanding our trade resilience in support of your China and journey. And whether that's the EU, the UAE, the GCC, or India, we're building a lattice work of deals that offer economic opportunity and diversification for you. It also means providing certainty in a more volatile and uncertain world, as we talked about at the beginning. Businesses don't expect us to deliver certainty from the global environment, but they also do expect us to deliver certainty from their own government. And so clear policy settings and predictable regulatory frameworks that enable businesses to invest and grow is absolutely critical. It also means being present and engaged. I honestly can't build relationships from behind my desk in Wellington. We have to be out there advocating for New Zealand on the road. And that's why we have taken to the road in the last 2 and a bit years, talking to other leaders, talking to investors between China and New Zealand. My ministers are doing exactly the same, reinforcing the work that you do in market. And I think finally, supporting risk management and resilience. We recognise risk as part of your context. Our role as government is to provide insight, to support diversification, to strengthen supply chain resilience, and help businesses navigate complexity. So let me conclude with this. The world is certainly more uncertain, complex and ambiguous, and it will stay that way. But we have the tools and we have the talent, I believe, to succeed from New Zealand. China, without doubt, will remain absolutely critical to that success, and we want to continue to deepen and broaden that relationship. My job as Prime Minister is to make sure we back you by opening those doors, providing the certainty, and representing your interests with great clarity and great confidence. And to you, I say, as the business leaders, keep building those relationships, keep backing high-value opportunities, and keep investing in the local capability in China. That's how we move up the value chain, that's how we grow our economy, and that's how New Zealand thrives, whatever the world throws at us. We're a small country, but we are a smart, connected and ambitious one. And if we stay focused and outward-looking, we won't just navigate this period, we'll certainly come through it stronger. So kia ora koutou, shishia, and thank you very much, and looking forward to the interview by Oprah.
Kia ora toto. We've got a foot lover over here in government.
One day I'm going to have a rejoinder for that, but maybe not a public.
If you all look under your cars, everyone gets a free BYD today.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister, for addressing us. Prime Minister has generously agreed to take questions from the floor, so get your Slido going. This is one of the opportunities that you do have. Look, I'd like to start just by talking a little bit about the strategic competition between the US and China and how you're navigating that, because it seems to be these defining forces in the global economy are playing a pretty big ping-pong game these days. How do you actually get through that?
I think the first thing to recognise is that New Zealand has an independent foreign policy. So, my job as Prime Minister is to act in New Zealand's national interests and to make sure I'm advancing those interests. We have long-standing relationships with both the US and with China, and they're both very, very important to us. And so we want, what we encourage is really good dialogue between the two major powers in the world. And the more that they can have positive discussions and dialogue and manage the risk in their relationship, that manages the implications, I think.
That's a nothing burger statement, by the way, so that means nothing.
Volatile, uncertain world. Yes, it's moving certainly from a rules-based system to a power-based system. Yes, it's moving from a multilateral to a multipolar system, as I've talked about before. There are these three big shifts, as we see, from rules to power, from economics to security, and certainly from global efficiency to national resilience. Those are macro trends happening in our geopolitical context. They are an inflection point in the geopolitics that we see out there in the world today. We've been here before, in terms of, I don't think we should be, it's caused anxiety and volatility and uncertainty for sure. But I think, we've been here before in 1918, 1945, 1989, and since 2024. So, we need to acknowledge that's a change, and we'll keep working with our like-minded friends to have influence in that. But in our interest as a small country, it's in the interest to see both the US and China managing their own relationship smartly and intelligently.
If I look back, probably a lot of the political rhetoric, and certainly out of government departments over the last 3 years, has focused on risk. And you talked about the shift from rules to power and all of that, which is quite true. But today you were very much opportunity focused. What is driving that? Is it the fact of the crisis that we're going through? What do you put that down to?
Well, I think it's just a realisation that 1 in 4 of our jobs are tied to trade, right? We were in a primary leaders forum yesterday morning in this very hotel, and we were just talking about the fact that 93% of our food is exported. I was in Singapore recently, and they import 90% of their food. So we know that for New Zealand to do well, actually in a more volatile and uncertain world, one of the ways you manage that is you have to build more diversification and create more opportunities, so that when the Americans put tariffs on their system, which we think is insane and just not a positive thing, we think that movie doesn't end well. Todd and I case very strongly to the US administration. We still have to find a way to grow in that marketplace. But equally, our exporters now can move production out of, or move their business out of the US, or reweight it into Europe, or to the UK, or into China, or ultimately India and other places. And so we're creating optionality, and that creates more diversification, which then manages that risk.
Have you modified the rhetoric?
Sorry?
Have you modified the rhetoric?
In what way?
From being more opportunity focused now as opposed to risk?
No, I think it's about compartmentalising and managing both. You actually need to be very clear-eyed about what risks you see out there in the world. You can admire the problem, and you can fail to acknowledge that there has been a shift in global geopolitical geopolitical environment. And so I'm talking very straight up about that, because I don't want people to be anxious and concerned about it, although they understandably are, because you see allies that are on the 6 o'clock news that are having tensions with each other. You see trade wars being launched. You see things that we haven't seen for some time. And New Zealand has done well in a post-war environment off that rules-based system, where small countries are treated the same as medium and large-sized countries. So I'm being very clear-eyed about that and saying that's the changing context or environment that we have to manage within. But there are 195 countries in this world with 8 billion people in them, and they're all going through and dealing with that same background that they have to build their propositions out on in a security sense, but also in an economic sense. So I don't see them as being, and I've always, and I've talked a lot about growth and opportunity that sits in many markets, including China. I think, I've been going to China since probably I was 22 years old, and I came, the last trip with the ambassador, we went to Shanghai, and you come out of Shanghai these days, you go, man, I remember going there first time and just being all bicycles, and now you come out and it's Singapore on steroids, right? I mean, it's unbelievable. And when you start to talk to the leader of the province there, and I had some very good bilaterals with, about where the opportunities are, it's just a fantastically inspiring story of, third world to second world to first world. I mean, it's so inspiring. So I think, there's a new China there. You and I've talked about this. Is that I think you said it, really well. Is that the new China is China in the sense of if you want to grow further, there's a lot more growth to have in that relationship. And I think our literacy's got better, in China as well. I think the quality of the partnerships is even better. The knowledge of the New Zealand exporters operating there is better than what I first encountered when I came home from New York.
Hey, just put that business lens on again. I mean, yes, you hark back to when you're 22, but you've done a lot more in business since then. But how do you see the untapped opportunities in China from a business perspective for our business people?
Oh, look, I think if you're a young person setting off in the world from New Zealand, you really want to understand China and you want to get there and you want to spend time understanding and knowing it. I've been there, I don't know how many times, 40, 50 times probably, but I remember when I was at Unilever, we were really in the mid-90s, late 90s, really, building out a business in China. And when you get out to those secondary and tertiary cities, and when you think about how you build distribution networks and places like that, and then you see probably the most competitive market in the world and the most discerning market in the world, and how consumer tastes have changed, that's really important. And that would be my advice is that, I said to Fran, when I was at Unilever, I used to bounce in and out of countries all the time and I'd go check on the chairman and CEO and how the business was being run and those kinds of things. I could ask a brand manager, actually, what's the margin here on this product line? How much money do you make with this channel or this distributor? And the knowledge was, I expected my team to know those things. And when I came home to New Zealand, I was actually initially a little bit underwhelmed that we sort of just sent it to make the product here, fire it off to a third-party distributor in China, and just hope for the best, more of a production mindset. Now I go to China with our delegations, and honestly, it's truly world-class. The knowledge of the customer, the knowledge of the channels in China, which have been evolving, but more importantly, the quality of the partners that they've been able to find, a new generation of really smart, sophisticated Chinese local partners. I've been very, very impressed by that. So I'm really comfortable with our on point, that we are world-class and understanding the channels and the customers. But there's so much more opportunity, tier 2, tier 3 cities, just go look at that.
I was in a briefing yesterday, which was Chatham House, so I won't tell you too much about it, but I will say one thing. There was an insight from that an AI and various other areas, a delegation who had been in China basically said they're 6 years ahead of us. How do we get that mentality back here and re-engineer our own economy?
Well, I think there's a lot of opportunity. I think we're missing a big trick on AI in New Zealand. I think we always used to pride ourselves on being very good adopters of technology, and we are on one level. But if I go...
We don't spend anything in R&D. If you want to be a government austerity, it's impossible to be head in AI or even try to be part of that race. You need to spend money, period. We use 1.9% of our GDP into R&D. It's nothing. It's like half the OECD average.
Around the Business Association, the Chamber of Commerce, and I get people to put their hands up who's using some of the AI tools. I'm constantly underwhelmed by how little we are adopting them. I think that actually starts with government. We're really stuck in a 1995 way of doing things. Why can't a 32-year-old mother who needs eyeglasses for the 9-year-old daughter and wants to understand her tax rebates for the with an 11-year-old and 9-year-old daughters actually be able to just do an inquiry rather than have to go to MSD and IRD and all that stuff? When you want to get a mortgage and you've got to prove ID and income, why isn't that just auto-generated like you'd expect in corporates? And you see in corporates now, it's not coming, it's here. It's been here now for 6 to 9 to 12 months. And so we have to disrupt government and public service with a view of large service organisations that have a customer mentality of serving the New Zealand public and are technology enabled. And of course, when you look at what's happening in China and how they are doing that, I look at places like Estonia, the UAE, New South Wales, and Singapore as well. There's just a huge opportunity. So I think we need a bit of a mindset shift, if I'm honest, in New Zealand about AI. I think we've got to be very alive to the risks and the dangers of AI, but we shouldn't be fearful about that. We need to manage that in a multilateral sense with other friends to build the regulatory frameworks to manage that. But there's more opportunity than there is downside for us in this country because we've had a productivity problem for 30 years under successive governments. One of the 5 things we have to do to make ourselves wealthier is embrace more science, technology, and innovation. And that's why, frankly, it's great to have Professor Dong from Hong Kong with us today as well, because actually understanding innovation systems and science systems is really very important. The 2 that I've looked at a lot for New Zealand is really the Irish and the Israeli system, and really we're adopting the Irish system to try and bring our public research institutes together with our businesses, with our universities. To give you a feel for on R&D in New Zealand, we're probably 19th per capita, in terms of our spend on R&D, but we're 46th on commercialisation. And I just hate it when I run into people and they go, "Oh, New Zealand invented that, a piece of science." You go, "That's lovely, sunshine," but actually who invented the $10 billion business? And it'll be some American or some Australian that gets to do that. So we want to brutally commercialise our science system and have it more joined up and less siloed. And I want professors to become millionaires because they're partnering with entrepreneurs and building up businesses like we're starting to see now with Oratane, and we're starting to see with Zethos out of Canterbury and others, where that interface between universities and entrepreneurship and government is all joined up like we see in other parts of the world too.
Now we'll go to some questions from the floor, and the first one from Raymond Young. Does New Zealand welcome China investment, and what sector do you think is the most viable?
Yeah, look, I mean, absolutely. It's a very good question because New Zealand has done a very poor job of attracting foreign direct investment into the country. In fact, we're in the lowest in the OECD, probably bottom 3. And so
our FDI was hired during Labour, by the way. A stable economic climate brings in foreign investment. It's a very simple thing, and if you cut public sector spending, which naturally decreases the economic climate, especially in a time of what basically is a recession, people don't want to invest in that kind of unstable market.
Know that we've got to get more foreign capital into New Zealand. And it's not just the foreign capital that comes, it's actually also the know-how, knowledge and connection to customers. So a lot of what we're trying to do on, say, the active investor visa, where we've attracted, I think, $4 billion from about 580 high net worth individuals, is we don't want the investment we've seen in the past, which has come and buy a